Welcome everyone to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. There was a historic deal that was struck in Washington, D.C. With President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. We need to discuss this. We need to hear what General Avivi says. So Brigadier General Amir Avivi, it's great to have you here. What
Thank
can you
you.
share with us? What are your reactions to this new deal?
Well, I think the deal really met my expectations. We had a briefing before the deal, and I think there were no big surprises, at least to me. I think it's indeed historic. I think that this deal that I must say was pretty much, written by Israel, but presented by the U.S. Really meets the expectations of Israel talking about reaching the goals of war. The deal gives Israel all the goals of war, meaning eradicating Hamas as a governmental and military entity, bringing back all the hostages at the very beginning, and also creating the terms that never again there will be a terror army in the Gaza Strip. But this deal, is much more than that because it's really in the context of a global agreement that will build a coalition, an alliance, a Western Israeli Sunni alliance that will extend all the way to Indonesia. And in this alliance, Israel, from a day before being completely isolated and people walking out of Netanyahu's speech, suddenly Israel becomes the cornerstone of a global alliance that is supposed to counter China and Russia and what's left of Iran. And I think that the interesting thing is Qatar, because we knew all along that Qatar is a terrible country. They're a Muslim Brotherhood. They host Hamas, they support Hamas, they fund Hamas. They are hated in the Middle East. They are undermining Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Egypt. Very problematic country. So what happened here? And the issue with Qatar has two aspects. One is that the ability of Qatar to continue existing, to thrive, was dependent a lot on Iran. The Iranians are a very strong ally of Qatar, but when they see now the influence of Iran diminishing dramatically, all the proxies of Iran being destroyed, Iran, being in an internal turmoil, no water, have been set back dramatically, sanctions that are imposed now, the snapback. The Qataris are asking themselves, can we rely on Iran in the long term? And what will happen to us if, Iran suddenly changes? Maybe the regime will fall. What will be the consequences of Qatar? And these consequences might be even existential for the Qataris. So they need to make sure that they have an alternative alliance. And when they see what is happening now, with the US leading this coalition, this buildup of an alliance, they are saying to themselves, we need to be part of this. But in order to really be part of this alliance, they need to give this deal what they can give. And this is basically instructing Hamas to surrender, to give back all the hostages and get out of Gaza. If they fail to do so, if they fail to get Hamas to surrender, and at the end of the day, Israel will have to do it by itself, then they're not part of the game. They are irrelevant. They show that they don't have a real impact. So it's worthwhile, in a way, with all the really huge problems we have with them, to get them on board. But this is if they give us what we need. We want the hostages now. We want Hamas to surrender now. It will save a lot of lives of the hostages, but also of our soldiers. So this is a very, very defining moment for Qatar. They cannot afford not to succeed. I think that they will go to the extent of even threatening, Hamas leaders in Qatar, and of course threatening what remains of Hamas leaders in Gaza, in order to get this deal done. So I'm optimistic about that. But again, I'm optimistic generally speaking, because even if they don't deliver, it's game over. Take a month, 2, 3, the IDF will get the job done and destroy Hamas. So one way or another, this war is on the verge of total victory, and it will be reached. The question is how. And I'm sure that the Qataris now are putting huge pressure on Hamas, and we'll see what happens. It was amazing to see that even the Turks, supported the deal, and we have all the major countries in Europe supporting, and India, and Pakistan, and so on. So the world is changing, and for the best for Israel.
General, thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you, there's of course an immediate need to win this war in Gaza, to end the war in Gaza, bring back the hostages. And there was a long-term concern or threat of Qatar. And can you just elaborate how bringing Qatar into the picture and giving them so much access and influence on what's happening in Gaza, how that's not preparing or laying the foundation for an October 7th to happen in 10 years from now under the instruction of Qatar? Meaning, I hear what you're saying, but can you just push it a little bit further? What kind of safeguards would be in place to make sure that Israel does not bolster our next enemy?
So Israel is controlling 80% of the Gaza Strip. Without full demilitarization of Gaza, Israel will continue controlling 80% of the Gaza Strip. There will be, the condition of Israel to withdraw to the next line, which is still inside Gaza. Even the final line is with Israel controlling Philadelphia corridor and Rafah, with Israel controlling parts of the northern part of the Gaza Strip, with Israel controlling all the perimeter, and with full freedom of operation of Israel to impose demilitarization in the Gaza Strip. So basically, Israel is responsible security-wise in the long term in the Gaza Strip. Full freedom of operation for Israel to make sure that there is no terror. But there will be no retreat to any line without them handing all the weapons and surrendering. And this is the big issue. Now, the deal is structured in a way that they don't stand a chance. Why? Because the first thing they need to do, they need to give back all the hostages. Now, you understand that once they give back all the hostages, they are completely defenseless. We can do whatever we want. If they don't lay down their weapons, it will take us 2 weeks, maybe a week, to crush them. Because without the hostages, Israel will go all out and destroy them. So giving the hostages means also lay down their weapons, because then that's the only choice they will have. They will want, if they give the hostages, it means that they decided they want to get out of Gaza. They want to simply surrender, put down their weapons, and get out of Gaza, okay? And if they don't give the hostages, there is no deal. And if there is no deal, Israel will move forward with taking over the rest of Gaza Strip and will destroy them. But with full support globally, because now the whole world is behind this deal. And the president said crystal clear, if you don't do the deal, Israel has our full support to go in and destroy Hamas. But then if this happens, Egypt, Qatar, all these countries will have zero influence on Gaza the day after. It will be all Israel. They have a lot to lose, a lot. It's not an option for them. And this is why I'm optimistic that they'll get Hamas to surrender, and also looking at Hamas. What are the choices? Die or get out of Gaza. These are there is no other choice for Hamas. It's either in the next month or two they are going to die, all of them, or they're going to get out of Gaza. And at this stage, I think that looking at the choices and looking at the needs of Qatar and Egypt and so on, and at this global alliance that suddenly shifted completely to the Israeli side, we are in a completely different reality.
General, in one of the later stages of the deal, the IDF would withdraw to the security buffer zone and seemingly not be active in the cities of Gaza. Even in the absence of Hamas and the absence of weapons right now in 2025, is there a concern over the next months to years the civilian population left unchecked and unguarded would build back up? Or is the IDF able to monitor and control what happens inside, even from the perimeter?
So the important thing is that we're controlling Philadelphia. There is no way to do a build-up inside Gaza if you control the border with Egypt. That's the main issue. But if there will be build-up of terror infrastructure inside Gaza, and remember that the civil management of Gaza will be run by the U.S. U.S. with Tony Blair, with the help of countries like Indonesia. And also, we have to remember that the retreat is also dependent on process of de-radicalization, and we have another very big tool: no reconstruction without de-radicalization. So basically, any idea of investments in Gaza will be dependent on keeping demilitarization and de-radicalization. If we see any attempt to build terror infrastructure in Gaza in the future, all these processes will stop. And by the way, all this agreement is not against the idea of a voluntary relocation. I think that once people are saying, what will happen when we open the border with Egypt, with like a Rafah crossing, which by the way will be monitored by Israel. But once you open Rafah crossing or even a choice to leave Gaza by sea, I think that many, many Gazans are going to live. I don't know how many Gazans want to live under U.S. technocratic, government. And also remember that the U.S. in Gaza are going to do investments in areas. They're going to build, inside Gaza, American installations. So Gaza is going to change end to end. I'm not sure people understand how big the change is going to be. A real big change. And again, all in the context also of regional peace agreements and really taking out of the equation both Iran and Qatar as funders of terror inside the Gaza Strip.
From the very first day of this war, IDSF has stood on the front lines with our commanders in the field and in the global battle for truth. Through our daily briefings launched on October 8th, 2023, we've given thousands of policymakers, journalists, and community leaders the clarity and direction that they can only get from Israel's top security experts. In less than 2 years, these briefings have been viewed over 2.6 million times. That's 2.6 million opportunities when Israel's voice broke through the noise of propaganda and distortion. But to keep going, we need your partnership. Every gift is more than a donation. It's a declaration that truth matters, and Israel's voice must be heard and will be heard. Stand with us today. Partner with IDSF. Be part of Israel's victory. To donate right now, you can click on the link in the chat or the description, scan the QR code that you see on your screen, call us, or send us a text message. Join us in fighting for Israel. Join us in the greatest victory for Israel. Based on this deal, what would you say is the future of the Palestinian Authority, and what is the future of the quote-unquote two-state solution?
Israel, I think, will never, ever agree to a two-state solution, which means withdrawal from Jordan Valley and Judea and Samaria. And I would say, Moshe, overall speaking, when we wrote our national security assessment that predicted the war, We talked about Iran and all its proxies, which we are dealing in the last 2 years and winning decisively. But the next threat we talked about was the fight over the land of Israel. And I think that the biggest challenge, and this is the challenge that the IDSF is going to push very, very strongly, and I'm already doing this, in media and social media and so on, is the shift between the fight along the borders to the fight over our sovereignty in the land of Israel. And sovereignty not only in Judea and Samaria and the Jordan Valley, also in the Negev, also in the Galil. We need governance. We need the rule of law. We need to stop the stealing. We need to stop the fact that in many Arab cities you have tens of thousands of weapons. We need to dismantle all of this. And we need to have sovereignty. And I think that when you look at the dynamics of usually what happens after war, like Yom Kippur War, which was a traumatic war, Israel finished the war and then grew the army exponentially. We produced like 3,000, 4,000 tanks, and then we didn't know what to do with them. I think that really the big issue is, how do you finish the war? On the one hand, you invest in the army what you need to invest, in the long term, but you don't go crazy. You understand that now you need to shift your budget and your capabilities from the army to the police, to the border patrol. Maybe even shift military units to assist in internal security, like a National Guard, which is, well, no matter how much money the government gave to the police, they didn't get it done. The situation in the Negev and the Galil hasn't improved. Complete failure. And this needs to change, and we need to shift the center of gravity from the borders, which we need to maintain and continue working along, to what's happening inside Israel to secure Israel. And at the same time, we need to start looking at delegitimation and anti-Semitism and deal seriously with this huge threat to the Jewish people. And Israel needs to be much more proactive, defending communities around the world, but also dealing with Aliyah. And I'm sure there will be a lot of Aliyah after this war and after this regional peace agreement and the huge, huge economic boom that is going to be here following the war.
General, it's amazing. We are all very narrowly fixated on Gaza, an area that you know so well, and you have just this much broader perspective, and you're looking forward. You've said for a long time now there are these four vectors, four different arenas of the war, and you're now moving on to the additional arenas that Israel needs to be concerned about its future, and not just focused on these smaller issues. General, in just an hour or so, the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur is going to start. Do you have any wishes, any words of encouragement for those of us who will be observing the day?
Well, I think that all of us, the Jewish people in Yom Kippur, we really, really, need to think about unity and common values. The Jewish people need to unite. We have been fighting for so long, sometimes I think we forget even why, the different ideas. And I think that we really need to get together looking at the reality around us. We have so many enemies. The Jewish people are in grave danger globally. And it's time for us to unite and work together and really strengthen our basic Jewish values and Zionist values and our sense of rightness. And to remember, we are the heroes of our own story. And our story is the biggest one, biggest of all. And I wish everybody Gmar Chatima Tova, to you, to your families. And I'm really looking forward. I think this coming year, after Yom Kippur, is going to be a very, very special year for Israel and hopefully for the Jewish people.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for all of that. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We are going to have a little bit of a different schedule as the holiday of Sukkot is fast approaching, so make sure to be subscribed to our emails so you can stay tuned of all of the future programs that we have coming up. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.